Welcome. I'm Kevin Miller. This is a podcast for your personal evolution. In this episode, why we actually want to experience the bittersweet. So we're all aware of the primary categories of our emotions, such as joy, trust, fear, surprise, happiness, sadness, anticipation, anger, disgust. But I grew up thinking that some of those were good and desirable and some were bad and to be avoided at all cost. You're either being positive or negative. And the idea of allowing myself to freely marinate in these just wasn't part of my understanding at all. Again, especially the negative emotions were negative. Stay away from those. And I now feel that I missed out on so much. I've actually found joy in feeling sad and digging into it. I feel sad. Let's put on a sad movie and feel it more. Now, I don't let it overwhelm and control me, but I've found value from allowing myself to feel. And I was thinking about movies, speaking of that, and found out the most popular movie categories, check this out, are adventure, 24.8%, action, 23.2%, drama, drops to 14.1%, but is number 3, comedy, 14.01%, a little bit after that, then thriller and suspense at 7.3%, horror at 6.4%, and romantic comedy at 4.3%, which shows me that we pay money and choose to watch movies that aren't just happy thoughts. We want the suspense. We want the hard feelings, because then the redemption feels so great, right? We want to experience those wide range of emotions. We pay, it's obvious. And yet in our own lives, in the life that I embraced, I don't want anything to do with those negative emotions. So a few years ago, I sat down with an expert on the topic, Susan Cain. Very good chance you know of Susan. In 2013, she published a book called Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking. It was beyond a bestseller. At the time that we talked, it had spent 7 years consecutively on the New York Times bestseller list. It may still be there. Her follow-up book, however, is what I had her on the show for, and it's called Bittersweet, How Sorrow and Longing Make Us Whole. It was also an instant New York Times bestseller. But in talking with Susan, she helped me realize that the most beautiful and joyful experiences of my life have also held an ache and a longing. And this is what Susan is specifically speaking to and trying to uplift. She gives focus to 4 Hippocratic temperaments of sanguine, melancholic, choleric, and phlegmatic. Most of our world's greatest creativity and art comes from a melancholic temperament. But Susan writes, we've organized American culture around a sanguine-choleric outlook, which is forward-leaning and combat-ready, while Freud labeled melancholic as narcissistic. And the mainstream culture often views sorrow and longing as clinically depressed. Susan asks, how did a nation founded on so much heartache turn into a culture of normative sunshine and enforced positivity? So what you're about to hear is a real candid discussion that gives us, I feel, permission and inspiration to feel the feels and allow sorrow and longing in to benefit us and help us more fully experience joy and beauty. You can connect with Susan at susancain.net. Though you type in Susan Cain, you'll find her anywhere and everywhere. So coming up, my discussion with Susan Cain talking about the benefits of bittersweet. Let's evolve ourselves today. Susan, having you on for this book, Bittersweet, I really feel like I'm coming to the party late because you wrote Quiet. And I totally missed that one. And it's so my heart. So I just want to tell you that I did the quiz, the Quiet quiz, and I was 17 true, 3 false. So that tells you about me a little bit.
Oh yeah. Wow. And isn't it a funny thing how many podcasters are quiet types, as they tell me? And it's also true, on the lecture circuit, like if you go around at conferences speaking the way I do, and then you start chatting with your fellow speakers, they're all introverts.
It is odd. It really surprises me with comedians.
Yes.
Even stand-up comedians. I didn't really have a file for that when I first heard that. And at that time I thought I was an extrovert as well.
Uh-huh.
in my own unawareness. Well, which is what we're going to get into here with Bittersweet as well. And so I'll tell you on your Bittersweet quiz. So folks, I'm saying that the quiet quiz, so 17 true, 3 false, that labels me as quite the introvert. If you haven't taken that, and you can do that at susancain.net, you can do that on our website and find it. And the Bittersweet quiz, which is showing your temperaments, I was a 6.9.
So you were on the bittersweet side of
I was
the
on
spectrum.
the bittersweet side.
Yeah.
And there's our intro to the show, because I have lived my life primarily. So if we're talking about the Hippocratic temperaments, sanguine and choleric, the exact same as our great American culture, as you've shown us. That's what runs it. That's performance. That's out there getting the accolades. It's what got me on the podium as a professional athlete. And you get a lot of applause for that. And yet it's not really who I am at the core. And it feels like that's so much of your message. Here we are, and we have people of all different temperaments, but the ones that get the applause are sanguine, optimistic, social, and choleric, which it sounds bad. Give us a better term, because it says short-tempered, irritable, and fire. But couldn't you say driven to a degree?
Yeah, I guess you could say driven, and but it is also about choleric is about being willing to be, aggressive to the point of confrontational and belligerent even. But I guess what you could really say is, if you look at the culture that we now have of righteous outrage to a degree that is getting us all in trouble, where there's a kind of performative outrage that people engage in every day in their social media, that's kind of an outgrowth of us living in a culture that really lionizes that, on the one hand, the cheerful and optimistic, and on the other hand, the assertive to the point of aggressive, let's say.
Which is interesting. And again, when we look at any of these, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I was just going to say, for all these temperaments, like as with almost everything in life, it's like there's the good side of it and there's the bad side of it. And, your deepest weakness is also your deepest strength. And your deepest strength is your deepest weakness when you flip it over. And so that's true of all of this. Like if you're cheerful and optimistic, it's obvious what the strengths are of that. And the downsides of it are that it can be delusional, and it could delusionally positive, and it doesn't admit the full range of human experience. And then if you look at the choleric, which means the assertive to the point of aggressive, well, it's very helpful as an individual and as a nation to be able to assert your boundaries. But if you do it too much, then it leads to divisiveness. And so with bittersweetness, which is kind of the melancholic temperament that I'm talking about in this book, we're very aware in our culture of what the downsides are of that. It's not a celebrated way of being in our culture. It feels to us kind of like droopy and not not go-getting in some way. But the upsides of this temperament, and this is what I spend the book demonstrating, is that it is connected to creativity, and the expression of melancholy is also connected to human connection and human communion, and even to a sense of transcendence. We found that people who score high on the Bittersweet quiz also tend to score high on measures of creativity, measures of awe, measures of wonder, spirituality. So there's this kind of hidden superpower in the melancholic temperament that we're not aware of, because we're kind of only aware of the negative side of the temperament and not of its powers.
Well, I appreciate you talking about that there is a good and bad. I think people tend to look at even personality profiles and deem that this style is better than another, and we get into trouble doing that. And on that same parallel, in a sense, I am sensitive to the label of you are this. Like we're all a thoroughbred, in this sense, a thoroughbred temperament, a thoroughbred personality style. Because take the choleric. You said the word go-getter a minute ago, go-getter, a risk taker, assertive, aggressive. I'm high on the aggressive and assertive aspect to a point. In some areas I am, some areas I'm not, but I'm amazingly conflict averse, which doesn't fit there at all. And so, as people are hearing us talk about that, I want them to hear that and realize, gosh, you're not stuck in a box of this thing we're looking for. If we look at every one of them as a spectrum, I bet you could draw us a great graph of how the spectrums can overlap and overlay. Some of them are natural, some of them are learned and whatnot. And so it's a difficult, it's complex, I guess you could say.
Yeah. And I really love it that you're starting out by reminding us of that nuance. It's incredibly important because humans are so incredibly and richly complicated.
Yeah.
So no one is all one thing, and no one's saying that anyone should be all one thing. And we all, if you think of this particular temperament structure that we're talking about now, of like the sanguine cheerful and the assertive aggressive choleric, and then the melancholic bittersweet, I would wager that every human on earth has aspects of all three of those in them. Some of us are going to tend in one way more than another way, for sure, but we all know them. But what's helpful to understand is also kind of like the cultural analysis. So to be aware of ourselves as individuals who are living in a culture that is encouraging us to develop one side of ourselves in a kind of lopsided way, and to shut down or ignore the other sides of ourselves. So, like our culture is telling us, be cheerful, be optimistic, be assertive to the point of aggressive, don't be melancholic, don't be bittersweet. And that is shutting ourselves off from the part of ourselves that has access to these states of creativity and connection. And I don't think we want to shut them down.
Well, that's what we're going to dig into. Is it fair, Susan, to say also that if someone views themselves as 100%, in this quadrant, in this temperament or personality style, whatnot, that as you say that, we all have pieces. Let's look at the 4 temperaments here. And folks, you can go look up the Hippocratic temperaments. It's sanguine, melancholic, choleric, and phlegmatic. And if we look at that to say, or I feel like you just said, we all have parts of those in us. However, we may be very unaware of them. We may be performing, as you said, towards a certain aspect of these. And we do feel like we are all one of it because we are not aware of ourselves. And I'm telling my own story because I lived so much in that, as you said, sanguine and choleric. That was that's the persona I embraced. That's the applause I embraced. That's the affirmation that I embraced. And I can do that just like I can extrovert. Now it drains me, but I can do that. And but again, so we can do those things, but we're performing, they can drain us. The natural us, which I don't know if we ever get to our full natural selves. There's the quest. And you're saying we're going to have parts of these. And that's what you have me looking at and considering. I was texting with my family yesterday, some of the things out of your book, literally taking snapshots. Go, look at this is me, guys. And I was naming some of my family members. I think this is some of you guys. And I don't know that we've opened the door to allow and applaud for that.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. So like, what were some of the things that you saw in Bittersweet that you feel like describe you or describe your family members?
Oh my gosh. I have marked your book up, Susan. I can show you here, but the aspect, I'll tell you, when I looked at melancholic, and you do talk about sadness, and I want us to dig into sadness, but I also in that, and you do say, analytical is part of it, quiet, whatever, but I thought of thoughtfulness. And lately, literally recent years, I have grown fond of the concept of contemplative. I want to contemplate. I want to consider things. And that to me is, that's not what we applaud is, the busyness, I'm super busy. I'm thinking, no, I want margin in my life that's when I can go deep. That's when I can create. But man, you don't get kudos for saying, no, I got plenty of time, man. I'm really flexible. That's not where your credibility comes from in our culture right now. Your books, I hope it helps.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. And it's a funny thing because we do obviously in our culture reward creativity. Like once it's successful creativity, then we reward it. But we don't reward the conditions that breed successful creativity. Because successful creativity requires solitude, and it's often associated with states that have to do with longing and sorrow, not perpetual sorrow, but being attuned to those aspects of human nature. I mean, you saw this in the book that there are just so many studies showing this connection between experiencing sorrow and then entering into the creative state where you're kind of turning the sorrow into something else, which I think is what creativity is often doing. So, we love a good song and we love a good movie and we love a great artist, but we don't love the states that breed that person.
Okay. Thank you for that. That opens up a door too, Susan, because I have been, as you have, privileged to know, being close friends with a lot of literal artists, the performing arts, music, whatnot. And I've always been enamored with their story. Somebody will come, hey man, I got a new song that I wrote for somebody or wrote for myself or whatever. And then they'll say, let me play it for you. And it's just raw on the piano. And then they say, yeah, I was doing this and I was doing X and it came out. And then I got together with, whoever co-writer and we did this, and I get to hear the story. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I wish people could hear this, because all they hear is the produced thing out there and they take from it what they will. Yeah. But you're right. Not only do we not really applaud, we really just don't go to the process that got this art to be delivered. Finally, we see what's delivered, and we don't go and look at give gravity, maybe give value to the process. They got to, and if anything, we may look at it negatively. And I think that's what you're showcasing that we tend to do, and how really counterintuitive it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And like the life experiences that give rise to it. Like, I mean, I happen to love the musician with a crazy love. I love the musician, Leonard Cohen.
I know. Yeah, I've been listening to him thanks to you again. Yeah.
Yeah. So I dedicated the whole book to him. And as I was writing the book, I was like learning more about his story, and his musical career began when he was 9 years old and his father died, and his father had been, I think, like, he sold suits, for a living. And so he took one of his father's old bow ties and he wrote a poem, and he took the bow tie and he took the poem, and it was the first poem he had ever written, 9 years old, and he buries it in the family backyard. And that's like his first act of creation, and his first act of turning pain into something beautiful, which is what artists often do. And we actually know there's all these there are studies showing that many of our great artists lost one or both parents before the age of 18, which is not to say, God knows, that one would wish that on anyone. And it's also not to say that if you were lucky enough not to be orphaned before age 18, that you can't do something creative. It's just these studies are a kind of echo of something that's going on in human nature, where when we're functioning at our best selves, we have the capacity to take the difficult things that happen to us and turn them into something else. And that's not to say that we have to turn them into something conventionally creative, like a painting or a song, or, that you have to suddenly host a rock concert or something. There's a lot of different ways to be creative, and there's a lot of different ways to make meaning out of this curious situation that all humans are in, which is we are going to experience joy and love and beauty, and we're also going to experience pain and loss and sorrow. And that is just what it means to be alive. And the question is, what do you do with that? What do you do with that?
I read your stat in the book on artists losing parents, and it reminded me of a similar study that was done of some of the world's greatest leaders a long time ago. But the CEOs, politicians, some of our biggest positions in the world at the time. And when it was done, it came back that 80% or so of those people had endured some significant hardships in their upbringing, specifically having lost a parent or a sibling, or having a handicap, or dealing with a sibling with a handicap. And in talking about it, we kind of surmised, we were thinking, why is that? Why does that hardship lead to? Because for every one person that hardship, they took it and created something. It drove them to do something great. There's a whole bunch of others, and it overcame them. But why is it that some of them did take it as a strength and go forward? And what we really came down to is that for them, in their upbringing, they learned that the world wasn't all about them. There was something bigger going on. But still back to that pain that they endured. Why do we have our most prolifically, I don't want to use the word success, but without a lack of better word, successful people, and they have come from some level of pain. It almost makes you think that the biggest detriment to your, quote, success is just kind of having a nice little vanilla life. Can you?
Yeah. And I wouldn't say that, because the way I look at it, the way I look at life is that there are a lot of different kinds of powers that are on offer, and that the secret to a life well lived, or one of the secrets, is to figure out the power which you've been granted and then to use it well. And so I think that somebody who is lucky to have lived, at least up until this moment, a relatively untroubled life, and maybe someone who has a very cheerful and optimistic temperament and all that, that person has one particular set of powers that they should go forth and use. And we know those powers well, and they can be quite wonderful. And then the person who has had more than their fair share of adversity, and who perhaps has a more melancholic temperament, that has a power of its own, and they should use that one. And we know this message from all the movies, right? It's like look at the Marvel movies. It's like, one person has the power of amazing strength, and another person can climb up walls like a spider, and then you go to Star Wars and there's another person who's granted the power of a lightsaber and the Force. That's kind of how it works. We all have our different powers. We don't get all of them, but we get some of them, and we have to use the ones we have. And this particular set of powers that you were just talking about with that leadership study, it made me think of Aristotle. I started the book quoting him. It was 2,000 years ago. He starts looking around and he asks the question, why is it that so many of our great poets, politicians, and philosophers seem to have such a melancholic temperament? Why is that? And that question has been echoed throughout the ages. And my book is kind of an answer to that question.
Well, so on that, one of the terms that comes out of melancholic that you discuss at length in the book is the word sad, and how we associate so much negative baggage out of that what I ended up pondering was, why do we associate sadness with weakness? Can we not be sad and not only strong, but can we be sad and even optimistic? Can we be sad and have, deep abiding joy as well? But we also have sadness. We don't seem to hold that together, be able to, in our culture.
I know. And it's a very strange thing, because the whole premise of what Bittersweet is the fact of joy and sorrow always traveling together. So it's not really ever the case that all is sadness. Sadness coexists with happiness and joy, as your question suggests. And I think the real power of sadness that our culture is cut off from is the power of human connection. Yeah. That there's something about when we're willing to admit that we're sad and be attuned to other people's sadness, it opens us up to other people. And I look at this in the book from many different points of view, but one of them is the story of Pete Docter, who's the great director at Pixar, who created Up and Monsters, Inc. and then the movie Inside Out. And Inside Out, which was this huge box office sensation, it's a movie that's basically looking at the emotional life of an 11-year-old girl. And when he starts telling, when he started working on it, the movie's basically focusing on her emotions. So the emotions are the central characters. And he knew that he had to pick two emotions as the central character, because that's the only way to tell a story, is to, you know, to have your main characters. And at first he picked the emotions of joy and fear to be the main characters. And he worked on the movie for like 3 years. And then he suddenly realized it's just not working. And the movie's going to be a flop, he thinks. And he starts spiraling out of control, and he kind of descends into this pit of sadness because he's thinking the movie's going to be a flop. I'm going to lose my whole career. I'm not going to work at Pixar anymore. And then what he thinks is, I'm going to be cut off from the people who I love best, like all these people at Pixar, my beloved colleagues. I'm not going to get to work with them anymore. I'm going to lose them. And that's when he has his big epiphany, which is that what sadness does is it connects us to people and it makes us realize how much we love them. And so he decides that he has to put sadness at the center of the movie. And he has to go and tell the executive committee at Pixar that he's been working on this thing for 3 years and he's had it all wrong all this time. And he's worried that because they live in this same culture as the rest of us that is afraid of sadness, he's thinking they're not going to let him do it. Like, who would want sadness as the main character of a children's movie? But somehow he convinces them, and sadness is right at the center alongside joy. And the movie is a huge sensation because we watch the movie and we know it's telling us a deep truth. You can just feel it. And the truth is the relationship between sorrow and human connection. And it's the same truth that we feel when you listen to a sad song that you love in a concert hall, surrounded by other people who love the song. And the reason we all love it is because the song is speaking to a sorrow and to a pain that we've all shared. And we know we're like in it together. And this is the state of being human. And we're not walking this state alone. Mm-hmm. And that's why at those concerts, you have some of the most profound moments of your life, because the experience of shared human connection is like, you know, transcends what you'd feel in the everyday.
Well, Susan, I'm reading the book, I'm resonating, I'm hearing you talk now, and I would be remiss if I did not also, in candor, admit, I'm seeing a therapist. Well, I see therapists a lot, but I am now. And the latest book that was recommended to me, or not the latest, but a recent one, was Brene Brown's Atlas of the Heart. Yeah. And I know I think you were just on Brene Brown's show, or she was on yours, or one of them. And it was prescribed to me because of my lack of awareness of my own emotions. So even as I read your book and I'm resonating with it, and there are things that I have known about myself, but it's an area of blindness for me to look back and go, gosh, that's why I was so moved by that. That's why I was 19 years old. And I remember the state I was in on what race we were going to when Bonnie Raitt's song came out, I Can't Make You Love Me. And I'm just near tears. And one, I don't cry. And two, I don't really feel. And three, I have no relation. I've never been in love or even in a relationship. And yet she just slayed me with that song. And I'm listening to it. And just, those moments that we have. And it was such a comfort really to read Bittersweet, Susan, even the style that you wrote it. And it helped confirm and I think bring to the surface all the visions and all the sounds and the things that have been, as you talk to in the melancholic aspect, it's a tendency to notice beauty. Yeah. But along with it is pain. And there's been so much, I think some things that I've even shelved that have been so poignant is the word you use so much, poignant and beautiful, that it's a pain. It's almost too much. Looking back, one of your questions in your quiz was, I think, are you moved by old pictures? Did I get that right? Something to that degree?
You did.
I'm at a point right now. I've got a lot of kids. I've got older kids. I got younger kids, and looking at the young pictures of my older kids is almost too much for me right now to realize that little person and my relationship with them is gone. Yeah. I adore And in some ways, even more so, this older person, but that little person is gone. And it's a beauty and a pain that's just about unbearable.
I had huge goosebumps as you were describing that. And we're recording this 2 days after my 2 boys left for sleepaway summer camp for the first time ever. Wow. So my husband and I are experiencing a kind of like, forecast of empty nest syndrome for the next 7 weeks. And I know exactly what you're talking about, and you're so happy for them. And I know what you mean. Like the person they've become, you love just as much, if not more. And like their company as older people is so incredibly delightful. And yet, yeah, my husband always does this thing where he sends photos just like randomly. They'll just pop up into my text, old photos of the kids from years ago. Uh-huh. And I know exactly the feeling you're talking about. We all do. We all know it.
I think we all do. And your message here is help bring it to light, and bring it to light in a different perspective, that this thing, like melancholic, that is not a negative. Sadness is not a negative thing. And again, I'm the primary student here, Susan, because as you talk about sadness you talked about it amongst talking about that movie Inside Out and some other ways of it being a primary connective point. I get it, but I have not done that well. I have not done that well as a father. I've not done it well as a husband. I've not done it well as a friend until literally as of late. It's been a discussion. I had my guys. We have a Friday morning group, and we actually had dinner and wine together, and it talked about this kind of line that there's some places we haven't really gone well together in sharing some of the pains and some of the sorrows. We don't do that as guys, especially.
Yeah. And you're taught not to.
We're taught not to. And I thought about your book, watching a sad movie. You mentioned that. And that's a consummate thing. Oh, chick flick, girls get together and they watch a sad movie. Guys don't do that. Guys don't. Every once in a while, there'll be a sports movie or a military movie and it brings a little tear, but you don't get together.
I know.
We're not hugging on the couch and connecting with it. Yeah.
Right. And there are with the sports movie or the military movie, there are those moments where you can go there. Like, which is the movie? I think it's 1917. It's about World War I. I don't know if you've seen that one.
I don't know.
Oh my God. It's a great movie. And there's this scene in the movie where I think it's World War I. I saw it a while ago, but anyway, the young men are about to go off into battle, and that many of them are about to be killed, like within the hour. And somehow they're all sitting in the middle of this woodland, and there's a guy who comes to sing to them and he sings that song, "I am a poor wayfaring stranger."
Oh, yes.
You might even want to, if you can, like incorporate it into the podcast right now for people to hear, because this particular version of the song, it's so haunting and so gorgeous.
I know it from Ed Sheeran. That's who I know the song from.
Okay. Right? I'm going to send you this version. It's so beautiful. And so it is one of those places where men are kind of culturally permitted to go into that poignant space. Yeah. And the song is expressing this deep longing that is at the center of all human DNA. And I would say, the other place that we are all allowed to express that longing, besides sports and the military for men, is in religion. All religions express this. There's the longing for the Garden of Eden, and the longing for Zion, and the longing to be united with God, and the longing for Mecca, and the longing for the beloved of the soul. There's 1,000 ways in all the different religions that this gets expressed. And, and then you have in The Wizard of Oz, like Dorothy is longing for somewhere over the rainbow. So this is the center of what it is to be human. And we need to find ways where it works to express it in our culture.
Well, so let's hit on that. Again, I've grown up in the self-help industry, the personal development industry. Mm-hmm. I've been so aligned with Zig Ziglar and the Ziglar Corporation for so long. Everybody knows him as the optimist and the positivity. And even his quote, one of his primary quotes: "You can't positive thinking won't let you do anything, but it'll let you do everything better than negative thinking." Now, if we're in a workplace or I understand and agree with the concept of that to a point. But then
Well,
go ahead.
sorry, I was just going to say, I mean, I think it depends on what we mean by negative thinking. I mean,
I
if by
agree.
negative thinking, we mean, thoughts like, oh, I can't do this, or this
Right.
is too hard, or I'll never be able to make it work, then
I'm
sure, I
worthless.
would, yeah, or I'm worthless, or that kind of thing. Sure. I mean, then I agree. Those kinds of thoughts are not really going to get us anywhere. So that's not really what I'm talking about.
Right. But
I mean,
it still goes to the positive aspect of positive everything, Pollyanna everything. And we
mm-hmm.
hear that and we get the concept, but then I think we take that as a hook, line, and sinker aspect. And again, I'm talking for myself, Susan. I did.
Yeah.
So everything's optimistic. Everything's glass half full. We make lemonade out of lemons and whatnot. And I did not allow the sorrow. I did not allow that aspect and missed out on connection. I think
mm-hmm.
I have missed out on creativity
mm-hmm.
that I've got within me, as opposed to, well, again, my therapist right now, one of the main things they're saying, Kevin, when you feel bad, would you just sit in it for a minute? Don't go run. Don't go turn good music on. Would you sit in it and feel it for your own benefit and the benefit of everyone around you, instead of just running from it? So I'm on the heels of this when you come along and showcase the glory, if I can say, of Bittersweet, of the pain, of the sadness, of letting that and embracing that. And then all the things that you lay out as far as beautiful things, like the songs from Leonard Cohen and whatnot, that are a beautiful depiction of this pain, a beautiful, that should be hopeful. And that's what I want people to hear from this show.
Yeah, it's extremely hopeful. It's extremely hopeful. And it's also one of the things that takes us out of ourselves and to this realm of connection. And I mean, one of the greatest ways to feel better is to be able to escape the ego. And I think this is one of the great gateways that we have for doing it. But why do you think it is? Like, why was your therapist recommending this to you? Like, what did he or she think that you would get access to that you had been depriving yourself of?
Oh, goodness. Great question. I think it was connecting with myself first off, and just admitting that there is sadness there. It's not a bad thing. Again, they got me going through Brene Brown's, Atlas of the Heart.
right.
It's not a bad thing that I am. As my wife has so often said, Kevin, you are human. You are human. It's okay to be human. And to some degree, Susan, to quit performing. Performing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's really what's at the heart of all of this in modern day. Like, there's so much performance. There's so much performance that's going on. So, to be able to talk about these things, it's really just a way of telling the truth of what you actually experience.
Okay. I agree.
And then you can like relate more honestly with people, because you're actually telling them the truth as opposed to only telling them half of the story.
Yes. And I thought you were going to say something else. It was also a part of my own self-compassion.
Yeah.
To allow myself to admit that I'm sad and that is not going to cripple me, which I want to hit that, because we are in a place, as you well know, of really bad stats of despair and depression, suicide and whatnot. So I'm concerned that we have more fear than ever at the moment with these sad feelings, these melancholic feelings, which is relevant if you are overtaken by them.
Yes.
And I feel like you do a good job of balancing that this is a part of a healthy human, but maybe address that right now too, because it feels like we're in a cultural fear of that. And I can see a lot of people run in the opposite way, trying to drag their kids out of any melancholic, thought or feeling that it's going to just go downhill and they're not going to recover.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you're asking that question, because I would say one of the most common questions that I've been getting is people being afraid. They're like, well, I'm afraid that if I tune into this side of myself, I'm going to kind of like fall down a hole of melancholy that will lead to depression and I will never come out again. And what I would say is I understand why someone would have that fear. But this is not about tuning in only to sorrow. It's about tuning into sorrow as well as to joy, which actually makes you much more whole, and less depressed at the end of the day. And I'll tell you a story, because you mentioned parents. So I'll tell you a story of something that happened with my kids, which is we went on this family vacation where we rented a house in the countryside when my boys were little. And this house was situated right next to a field. And in the field, there lived two adorable donkeys named Lucky and Norman. And the boys like totally fell in love with Lucky and Norman. And they spent the whole week feeding them carrots and apples and like hanging out by the fence. And it was this big love affair. And then we come to the end of the week, and the boys realize that they're going to have to say goodbye and that they'll probably never see these donkeys again. And the boys they're happy kids, but they're crying themselves to sleep at night, contemplating having to say goodbye. And as parents, at first they're like beside themselves. And at first we're saying the things parents usually say, like, someone else will come and take care of Lucky and Norman, or maybe we'll come back. Who knows? You'll see them again. And none of that makes any difference. And the only thing that actually stops the tears is when we say, these goodbyes, this feeling you're having upon saying goodbye, this is a part of life, because things don't last forever. And this feeling that you're feeling, everybody feels it too at different times. You felt it before and you'll feel it again, but the feeling won't last either, because things always change. But it's natural. It's normal to feel this way. And that's when they stop crying, because it's saying to them, this thing that you're experiencing is real, and you're supposed to be feeling it, and it's okay. Because so much of the emotional suffering we have comes not from the pain itself, but from our feeling that the pain is wrong and that we're not supposed to be having it. And once you accept that, oh, this is actually part of life, just like anything else, that resistance goes away. Yeah. And so you're only dealing with the pain itself and not with the whole secondary mechanism of resistance. And so far from descending into depression, it's actually like really comforting to know that, that this pain that I see on the horizon as goodbye is approaching, that's normal and everybody feels it.
Your story of the donkeys and your sons, one of the biggest shifts in my parenting, Susan. So I have got older. My oldest kid is 27 and my youngest is 10.
Wow. That's a huge gap.
It's a huge
That's amazing.
Gap. Yeah. There's a story there, but, the kid comes in from outside with a busted knee or toe or whatever, blood, or whatnot. And I, in all care, am scoop him down, get him in. Oh my gosh, let's wash it up. Let me get a Band-Aid on that. Let me put some antiseptic or whatever, to help the pain. You need ibuprofen, whatever. And I'm doing it. That's who I was. Mm-hmm. It seemed perfectly logical to me.
Sure.
My wife reads a book on attachment, and they do a study showcasing the beneficial attachment that happens not by doing that, by fixing the owie, but by just embracing the kid and holding them, and saying, I'm so sorry. It was one of the most immediate changes because I could do that day, with the next time the kid comes, okay, let's try it. Didn't address it. Blood's going down the knee, whatever, and just hold them. I'm so sorry. And the difference in their response, and we've saved hundreds of dollars in Band-Aids, because half the time they just, tears stop. And then they run off and go play again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it blew my mind as far as attachment and humanity and emotions and how we deal with that, just as you're talking about, as opposed to trying to minimize it, I guess, which is that's just what I understood. It's what I do with myself. And again, I got my own therapist saying, don't do that, Kevin, don't minimize it. And your story of your sons showcases that to me, if we can come in, well, you're back to connecting again.
Yeah. And it's not to say that you're wallowing. Like you're not saying
Yeah,
that
okay,
for the
right.
next week, you're going to be saying to your kids, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that you scraped your
Right.
knee. You're not going to do it for a week. You're going to do it for that moment in time. You're going to do it as the moment requires it. That's what you're going to do. No more and no less. Which I think is important to say, because there is such a fear about wallowing in negative emotions.
Yeah. You say, it was actually in the intro to your book, you said the place that you suffer, in other words, is the same place you care profoundly, that you care enough to act. And that brought me, again, it was just such a highlight of this idea, especially in the business world, you know, this, that the idea of go and work at your passions, find your passions. And we use that word passions. I had two guys, John O'Leary and the other guy's name I'm not pulling up at the moment. In the span of about 30 days, I had them both on my show, these two guys. And in talking about this kind of a topic, they said that what resonated with them more so than passions was, what's that thing that breaks your heart? So I got it delivered to me twice, and it resonated more, Susan, because I've said in years past, without different vernacular that I was aware of, I said, man, a lot of the things that I go after are things that just burden me. That was the word that I used.
Yeah.
I like there breaks your heart, but you brought in that the place you suffer, that place where you care profoundly, is the place that you care enough to act. You could, again, extrapolate that to a passion, but I feel like it opens the door maybe in a more authentic way, more broadly than just the passion, the positive.
Yeah. And I guess because I'm so focused on kind of like weaving together joy and sorrow. I mean, my reaction to what you just said is, I think it's both, honestly. Okay. Like, I think it's the place that breaks your heart and it's the passion. So I don't know, like I'm thinking, if you're the person, let's say your child was killed on a highway, and so you start the organization Mothers Against Drunk Driving.
Right.
Clearly that came from the place that broke this parent's heart, for sure. I'm also guessing, and I'm saying this actually without knowledge of this particular situation, but I'm guessing that this person who did this has some kind of passion for organizational life, or creating an organization or something, because otherwise you might direct that heartbroken impulse in a different direction. So I think it's a question of kind of marrying those two things.
Well, which is what you do overall. I mean, again, I'm thinking with Bittersweet, it's bitter and sweet. I mean, I don't think we even do justice to the word. It's bitter and sweet. And what you elevated to me in the book with your stories, because you have so many incredible, shameless plug for the book, folks. I mean, the stories that you tell drive home the concept so well, because it is a continual, I like the word tension, bitter and sweet, between the beauty and the pain. That's the one that I resonated most with. And it in years past, again, without having some of this vernacular, it was why it's so beautiful. It's kind of, it's an ache. And you use the word longing. It is, it's a longing. It's like, it's really too much to take in. And I think about that so acutely when we see something these days. So I live out here, I'm looking out my window. I live out in the National Forest in the Rocky Mountains. And there's nice. so much beauty. It's my daily visual vitamins. And there's so often the idea to take a picture of it to share. And it never even, at this point, half the time, I just don't. I just don't. It's just so stupid. You can't capture it. I can't even capture it with my own eyes as I'm seeing the sun. It's on my face. The snow's coming down, whatever it is. And the beauty, I can't even pull it all in. It's so beautiful. It's painful.
And I think what you're trying to capture when you have that impulse to share it. Yeah. It's not, I don't know that it's the beauty per se that you're trying to share. I think it's the emotion that it stirs up in you.
Okay. Keep giving me therapy. Yeah.
Well, there's something about entering into that kind of state of beauty where it's like beyond beyond everyday life.
Yeah.
That hits at that place where the longing and the thing that you long for are kind of coming together. It's the same thing like when you talk about music, or like that moment that you might have at the concert where everybody's together experiencing a certain song or something. It's the emotion that the song has conjured up that we're all feeling together. That's what we're really in it for. And like what all these religions teach us about this is that the state of longing is actually one of the greatest states that we can enter, because it's the state of longing itself that delivers us closer to belonging. It delivers us closer to that for which we long. Yeah. And that for which we long is basically, love and divinity, if you're religiously inclined, or love, or, truth, or beauty, or goodness, like the highest states of humanity, or what we feel when we get into that state of longing. And that's why, you see like an incredible athletic feat. You're watching Messi on the soccer field, or you're watching Simone Biles, like turning her unbelievable somersaults, and you kind of like gasp. And what are you gasping at? It's like these athletes for a moment are delivering us to the state of this perfect and beautiful world that we feel like we long for, and that we feel like we belong to, but don't quite get to live in. That's the fundamental human state, and it's our best selves.
It does make me think of the things that do touch us like that are often maybe the things that we can relate to. Yeah. Watching sports, which I actually don't do. That's a odd thing, but I don't do, I know I don't do it that often, but I generally try to tune into the Olympics, and it just brings me to tears. Cause I understand that. I understand giving your all, having spent so long doing the dirty work back here that nobody saw, and to come forward and to put it all out. Watching this last Olympics, man, I'm not going to pull her name up either. I'm not doing well with names today, but the girl in the Winter Olympics, cross country skiing, the American, who just after every finish, she just splayed out, totally spent. And I wanted to get her on the show, and I've forgotten about it till now. And it just wrecked me, because it's such a beautiful scene to me that I can relate to. And you mentioned beyond everyday life, when we see that thing, feel that thing, hear that thing, experience that thing. And, you can use the word transcendence, which I think a lot of the religious sector doesn't like as much, or certain religions don't like, but I would say spiritual. It's something beyond self. It's something greater than just the little story of that I'm in generally in the moment.
Yeah, exactly. And you see it in so many different ways. So, I mean, my husband and my boys are all really sports obsessed. And if you met my husband, like, he wouldn't strike you as a bittersweet type. He's much more of like an athletic type. And we were like watching Stanley Cup last night, because he used to be a hockey player. And, and he was rooting for Colorado, and they won. And it's like this moment, where they come out onto the ice, and like the wives come out, and everybody's crying with joy. What is that? What is that? It's a moment that is beyond everyday life. It's a kind of moment of love that's getting enacted in a socially acceptable context. That's basically what's happening.
Yeah, it makes me think of excellence, or brilliance, or beauty, and the so many scenes that just evoke a tear. That evoke that feeling are generally the most beautiful. The wedding. Why is it that touches us so much? That symbolism of commitment and joining together, and and everybody's in tears, especially the father.
Yeah.
What is that about that? I come back to connectedness. It brings us all. It almost kind of levels the playing field, doesn't it, Susan?
Say more about what you mean.
Just when we, no matter where you are, no matter what, I just did a show on, racial equality and marginalization and stereotypes and kind of all that. And yet we can have some people of different socioeconomic levels, genders, race, yada, yada. And when we experience that, a moment like as we're talking about, and it brings everybody to tears, we're all on the same playing field.
Yeah.
Connectedness
and
again.
It's connectedness. And I believe it's connectedness around a kind of moment in which you're glimpsing the Garden of Eden. I think that's really what's happening. And I'm using the reference to Eden like metaphorically. It's like you go to a wedding and that, there's a moment in which everybody together is believing in the state of a possibility of like a pure and unconditional love that everybody longs for. So it's like this glimpse of the perfect world we all long for. There's like the epigraph that I use for the book. Well, I have two, but one of them comes from Gregory the Great, like in the year 540. So many centuries ago. And he's talking about the holy pain that people experience when they're faced with that which is most beautiful. And this is a professor of religion talking about this. And he says, the bittersweet experience stems from human homelessness in an imperfect world, but at the same time, a desire for perfection. And so when you're faced with beauty, he's saying the inner spiritual void becomes painfully real because you see that moment of beauty, at the wedding, and you're like, oh my gosh, there it is. There's Eden, and we're all together in our longing for it.
I think a foundational message that resonates most with me, Susan, with your book and your message from Bittersweet is that if I am not allowing the emotions and not allowing the pain, the sadness, I'm also not allowing the fullness of the beauty.
Exactly.
That's what burdens me.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Not allowing the fullness of the beauty and of the creative impulse and of our ability to connect in the first place.
But it's again held, as you said, with it's not just going down into the depths of despair. It's holding them both together. And something you said earlier, Susan, reminded me of and I was trying to think, is that just painting a positive light on it? But I don't think it is. And it was a depiction that I saw, might've been in a movie, might've been something I read, nothing new. Others may have heard about it, but it just resonated with me it was a death. Somebody died. I think it was a child. It was a parent lamenting a child that was 10, 12, 13, something like that. And they died and the parent just couldn't. Oh, I remember the movie, Collateral Beauty.
Never saw that one. Okay.
It's just tremendous as far as talking about emotions and dealing with trauma. And the guy could not get past the death of his child. And what was offered to him was the perspective of looking and going, could you look at it differently and say, I am so grateful that I got to experience that child at all for the 10 years, 8 years, 12 years, whatever it was, could I be? And I thought, okay, I could see that somebody might feel like that's putting a Pollyanna spin, but I thought, no, the reason that I would feel such a loss is because of my gratitude for my child, which again, I've got a lot. And so I think about this. It may sound morbid, but I think the chances of me losing a child are much higher than the norm. How am I going to respond? How am I going to respond? Because right now I'm preparing myself to respond poorly, to be overtaken by it, to end up in divorce, suicide, despair, whatever, or I'm preparing myself to deal with it as well as possible. And can I look at that now and go, man, the loss I'm going to feel is in relation to the joy that I have had in experiencing this person. And can I, if that moment came, can I rest more in that than the loss, or equally? Would that be fair?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And as you know, I in the book explored the question of how people might respond to the loss of a child, because it's one of the greatest and most profound losses that I could possibly imagine. Yeah.
I don't care to, I don't hope to, but it is a significant way of looking at the beauty and the pain that you have brought to this. As this book has come out, I just read I think it was today or yesterday, that writing a book is like telling a joke, and you got to wait 2 years to see if people got it. I'm right at the tail end of my first book deal, Susan. But as this book has come out, how has the response been? Has there been anything surprising that you have heard in response to the book that you may not have expected?
It's just been kind of amazing, because so many people, I feel like they're reacting kind of the way you've expressed, so many people saying, oh my gosh, I've been feeling these things all my life and never knew how to express them, or never felt like I could express them. And it's just an amazing thing. Like, what one person told me, she's been documenting these kinds of experiences all her life, and she has called them, quote, humanity pangs. So
wow.
Yeah. And then another guy who's a filmmaker in LA wrote to tell me that he also his whole life has had this experience of listening to sad music and having the same kind of experience that we've talked about, of, this sense of uplift and transcendence when you hear it. And he has always privately called it to himself, quote, that holy feeling, holy, like HOLY. And that's been an amazing thing. All these people saying that they now feel a kind of permission to access this thing that they've always known is their deepest state, but could never put into words, or never felt like it was okay to. And I guess what was surprising was when I wrote this book, I thought of it as being quite different from my first book, Quiet, which was about the power of introverts in an extroverted world. But the letters that I'm getting kind of echo the letters that I got from Quiet, in that with both books, it's people telling me, I now feel permission to be who I am.
I just wrote the word permission down. That's what I was going to come back with.
Yeah, that's absolutely the word. I get that word over and over and over again.
Wow.
Permission to be myself, permission to feel what I feel, experience what I experience, and to understand, the possession of a superpower that they hadn't been aware was like sitting right in front of them all this time.
That's what I'm taking from this, Susan. That's a primary thing. I'm eager to go partake of some things, some beautiful moments, and give more consideration to the pain and the ache and the longing, so that I experience them more. It was, I had Rick Hansen on the show a couple of years ago. His first book was the one I knew was Hardwiring Happiness. And he talks about in there that the way to most engage or digest happiness is to sit in it. Don't just notice it and take a picture of it but sit in it and let it resonate and feel it. And you have me feeling the same way when I see that beauty, when I hear that aura. It's sit in it and exactly. Feel both sides, feel the ache, and have permission to.
Yeah. It's funny you say that, because people ask me sometimes, well, what can I do, and how can I kind of access this state? And the first thing I say actually is to begin your day by proactively experiencing beauty. Because beauty itself like tells the truth of the fullness of our emotions. So if you're like totally opened up and attuned to beauty, you're also going to be totally opened up and attuned to these various aspects of our emotional lives, the ache as well as the cheeriness.
I love tension. I find myself talking about that more and more. People talk about balance, and I like the tension. And this is a beautiful, bittersweet tension. Thank you, Susan, for the work that you've done to bring this forward, for the permission that you're helping us all take for ourselves. And thank you so much for taking the time to be with me today.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Kevin, so much for having me. It was really a joy to talk to you.
Well, thanks for joining us in this discussion. That's again Susan Cain. You can find her at susancain.net. Though type in Susan Cain, you'll find her everywhere. The book that I was referencing, Bittersweet: How Sorrow and Longing Make Us Whole. Till next time, here's to the evolving you.
Yeah,